Good evening. Today is Tuesday, January the 27th, 2026. And this board meeting is now called to order. It is currently 6:02 p.m. All of our board directors are here except for Director Fuller. She's absent this evening, but has provided her questions ahead of the meeting. At this time, we will have our land acknowledgement by Director Parker.
Yes. We are gathered today on the land of the Kalapuya, who are represented by the Confederate Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederate Tribes of Celeste Indians. The relationship between the Kalapuya people and the land continues unbroken to this day, and we offer gratitude for the land and for the generations present and past who have stewarded the land since time immemorial. We respectfully acknowledge and honor past, present, and future Native American and Indigenous students and staff of Salem-Keizer Public Schools. We invite you to join us in honoring these ancestral grounds and celebrating the resilience and strength of all Native American and Indigenous people.
Thank you, Director Parker. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent, are there any modifications to the agenda?
There are none.
Thank you. I will turn this portion of the agenda over to Paul Odendahl, Chief Operations Officer.
Thank you, Chair Richardson, directors, student advisors, Superintendent Castaneda. Thank you for the time tonight to go through with you and share our enrollment forecast that we have put together for you. We could go to the, get the slides up here. We're working on that. There we go. Okay. All right, before we get into the forecast itself, by way of background, just very quickly, when we do this analysis, we work with a company called Flow Analytics, who has helped us with our forecasting for enrollment for several years. They also work with many school districts across Oregon and Washington and are fairly well known in this business. Also, David Hughes, our coordinator of business services, is here tonight, and he also works with us on the forecast piece to put this together. The forecast is a mix of both demographic and geographic study of the area there. It looks at the enrollment trends we have, our historical data, transfer rates, and we'll talk about student generation here in a little bit, but also it looks at the residential development of the area and how that's adding to our students. If we go to the next slide. And just to blow up that map a little bit, what this is just showing is we look at those trends. We work with the cities and the counties to look at permitting for new construction, for new land development, housing development. And on the map, those are shown by the blue boxes and the yellow circles, which are yellow is a single family, the blue is the multifamily. And so from that, working with the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, we have estimates of the number of students that come from new development, and that incorporates into our model looking forward. Next slide, please. So to get into the data about the changes we see in the forecast, this is an important slide that talks about the birth rate and how that affects our enrollment in kindergarten. So looking at this a little closer, the top line you see there in blue is the birth rate in the local area that we have from data from OHA that tells us the birth rates of new students at birth coming in within our district. And the line below it is it's off by the 5-year mark, but that's showing that group of when they're born, of when they will come to kindergarten into our schools. And then right below that, what you see is the ratio of that birth rate to those that we see in our kindergarten enrollment. So some things to look at here is you can see first off that the birth rate has dropped significantly. Coming out of COVID, that birth rate went down, and we've seen far less babies being born, right? I guess they're not born as students, but they will be students. So we see that going down to where, we had in the 3,500-ish number down to, 2,900 or so in the projections. And so with that, also looking at that ratio that we have there, you'll see that back in before COVID, we had about a 90% capture rate. So 90% of the students, our enrollment was about 90% of that birth rate. Of course, it's affected by other things. People move in and out of the district. New development may influence that number as well. But what you see after COVID, that rate went down, and then it recovered some up to about the 80% mark. So that's where we're at for enrollment, is about 80% of the birth rate is what we project going forward that we will have into our schools in the current state of business there. I'd also say that an important factor here is we've looked at other school districts with flow, other schools they look at, and this is fairly typical across the nation, really, of what they're seeing in that birth to kindergarten ratio as well. Next slide. Well, one of the good news, while that rate has dropped, this slide is a little complicated, I will admit, but what this shows you is the grade progression rates of when children come into us at kindergarten and they advance to first grade. This shows the progression rate of how that cohort has increased or decreased in size. So when you see on this chart anything above 1.0, 1.0 means it was 100% of the numbers we had in kindergarten progressed on to first grade. If it's higher than that, that means that cohort grew, the class size grew. If it's below 1, it dropped, right? And so blue are the numbers that are below 1.0. The green is showing you the above 1.0. And so if you average this all out, our capture rate is above 100%. So the children that come to us in kindergarten are staying with us. Well, we retain our students. They're not coming into the district and then leaving us. Next slide, please. This is the data that looks at the enrollment across historically by grade level. And I think what's important to look at here is that as you look at this at the kindergarten to the 12th grade, and if you'd push again. So where I've circled those rates just in the current year, what you can see with this drop in the birth rate that's driving down that enrollment, we are bringing in 2,500 kindergartners while we're graduating 3,500 seniors. And so we're seeing what you see at the bottom is there those large losses in enrollment. And it's not that we're shedding students during their education, it's just the fact that we have less coming in the door at kindergarten compared to what we're graduating. I'll go to the next slide. With this is kind of forecasting that going forward, and you see that same trend. The darker green is the largest cohort in that, and you see that it gets lighter as we go. And so that progression of those smaller kindergarten classes coming in as our seniors are graduating at a larger number, we see kind of this cascading effect wave of the enrollment dropping across the entire spectrum there as we go from grade to grade. And so as we look at that, it goes out, and in our projections, at some point it stabilizes. But so now, we'll see this, the largest enrollment drop is in elementary, but over time that will move to middle school and to our high school numbers. Next slide. Okay. All right, these very colorful charts, which I believe we picked the Jane Fonda 1980s workout colors palette to use. What these are showing here is, this is looking at our schools there, and basically it's ranking them by the size of the number of students at the school. And what you can see there is you look at that orange that's creeping in at the bottom, that's schools that we would project out with no changes to how we do business, going under 225 students there. And you see this kind of increasing the decreasing size of our our student bodies there. And then going to the next slide. This is that same data by capacity of our schools. So this is looking at what do we perceive as the classroom capacity of our schools compared to the number of students there. And what you can see is we see this decreasing capacity. I'm sorry, the capacity is opening up, lower utilization rates of our schools on our current projection there, to where we would have 11 elementary schools and that lower than 60% utilization rate. And the next slide, this is middle schools, and I won't dwell too long. This is the same data for middle schools. You just see that we're increasing in the lower rates of students in enrollment in the middle school. And the next slide, please. That's by capacity. So it flows a little bit later. And then the high schools, yeah, go ahead, push to the next one. And then the same piece for the high schools, where we see one coming in that will be below that 1,300 students in the far out years when that wave hits the high schools. And the next slide. Again, kind of the same piece there based on capacity of our schools, what we have. But we'll see that we get down to where all our schools, capacity-wise, will be in that lower than 75% or lower. So with that, I think some of the takeaways on this, we're seeing that decline in enrollment. But we do know the good news here is that we are retaining our students that come to our schools. They're staying, which is great news. And we have some challenges ahead with us to consider as we look at this enrollment and how we deal with this to maintain the quality of our education and our facilities. With that, Chair Richardson, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, Dr. Sanjagiri.
Thank you very much, Chair. And so you said that about 80% of all children born in our county or our school catchment area end up coming to our pre-K. So this is, and whoever shows up, there's a likelihood that they're going to stay. And we are thinking that it is the declining birth rate that is contributing to year by year thing. Here are some questions is, what can we do to ensure that 100% of kids who are born in Salem-Keizer end up taking advantage of the pre-K and early learning so that they are not only prepared for the first grade, but have a very good foundation so they are able to stay together. So that is one question, because we do a good job of keeping them once they come here.
Yeah.
But that means there is already a self-selection parents have gone through. But what about the cohort that from 0 to, or from pregnancy all the way to whatever age they are supposed to hit the pre-K? Are we working, have we completely used up all the slots available, or are there empty spaces where we can accommodate those kids also?
Yeah, that is, and I may ask for some help from Olga here, but just to start, as we look at that decrease, it's the birth rate, but then it's also parents choosing other options for their education of their child, right? So we know that may be homeschooling or private school, charters, other pieces that don't go in, but we are looking at some strategies for pre-K and to increase our numbers there, and I'll let Deputy Superintendent Cobb address that.
Thank you. As we look at our participation of students in pre-K, we have right now about 700 students. We have used every spot. And when we look at our retention rate for students that are in Head Start, we are at 95%. So when you compare that 95% to these 70-some, we know that if we get them in our doors at 3 years old, like you're saying, 3, 4, 5, they start the journey with us. We develop the relationships with the families. 95.5% of them stay with us. And so this has created just more conversation with our pre-K providers to see if we can grow and we can open more spots, more opportunities to have kids start earlier with us so that they can, stay.
Well, this has been the question that I probably would have asked 3 years ago or 4 years ago, because there are a lot of communities, especially immigrant communities. Not all of them are bringing their babies to our thing. So those who are already selected are the ones who are coming. In the sense, if you have an older sibling, then you kind of bring the kids. So how do we get new converts to Salem-Keizer? That's the question, right? And especially, pretty much all the babies are born in the hospital, so there are only two places we can have babies in this town, Silverton or Salem. So in other words, what are our ability to reach outside our school and make sure that we find a way to engage the families as soon as they're planning to have a baby, number one. And the second thing is, you also mentioned towards the end that not all can be explained by birth because some choose to do homeschooling or hold on to their babies at home. And which I really think that is another group where we need to start reaching out and trying to understand why that is the case, why they feel disillusioned by the public school system, so that we can really start finding a way to make sure that our early education or schools reflect their values as well. They feel a sense of this is a place to bring our kid and they can come and preach. So what mechanism we have to reach out to the families before they reach age 3? That's what I'm trying to understand. So that we can explain to them what public education can be, how it can reflect their values.
I don't know that we do a lot before age 3. We work very closely with Amity SD, and our pre-K program does a lot of outreach to medical providers, daycare providers, just any places in the community where our families with our youngest learners could be when they are 3. And then we try to match them to every spot that we have available in Head Start. We would love to continue growing our Head Start program so we have more spots available for 3-year-olds, and then we continue reaching out in that way. But I don't know that I can say that we do a lot of outreach from 0 to 3.
I'd just like to say this year I noticed a lot of community resource opportunities, and it'd be good if, I know Salem-Keizer was at those, but if we put an emphasis on pre-K at those, because families came, they really came out to those. Yes, Director Parker?
I just had a question about the forecast. How do we predict the forecast all the way to 35, 36? I mean, we have no idea. We can't predict the future. I mean, there might be next year abundance of kids. We might have 2,000. How do we go about getting the prediction to forecast that far out?
Right, thank you. It's a great question. So, if with the chart, of course, we have great confidence, I say, over the next 5 years because those children have already been born, right? So that projection we're fairly solid on. Beyond there, it gets to a margin of error, where we're predicting off of historical data and other trends that we've seen with flow. And so there is some, that percentage of error does creep into that, and it could change. And admittedly, if we were working off the last 10-year forecast that we did, we would still be growing at this point. So it is one of those ones where we predict out and forecast, but we update this every couple of years so that we can see how the trends are going. And perhaps everybody listening will say, I need to have 10 children and bring them to the school, but we'll see.
Chair, thank you.
Director Harnish?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple things just to address it, because I think your point is incredibly important. And so this is where I'm going to wear probably 2 different hats as I speak to this. But a couple of things, and Deputy Superintendent Cobb is correct. All of this pre-K spaces are full right now, which is at capacity, which is fabulous. And so part of this is a funding piece, because those are funded separately through Oregon Pre-Kindergarten or Preschool Promise. And if the district chooses to do some other tuition base, then that's another story. But the spaces are full. The other thing that I would say in terms of the resource actions that are happening across the community, that's a huge piece. And Salem-Keizer does attend a lot of those family resource fairs. then there's also the role that we as an early learning hub play in helping families find the best fit preschool program. So there's a lot of exchanging of information and helping families get pointed into the particularly subsidized preschool program. The third thing that I would say that the district is doing really well is through the grant that we have, the Kindergarten Partnership and Innovation. And that is that connection between early childhood programs outside of the district, like childcare programs or other preschool programs, to help to smooth that transition between preschool and kindergarten, so that when families are kindergarten eligible, then there's more awareness of the school and where they would go, and helping to make that transition really smooth. So I would just say a lot of that work is happening to make sure that we're making sure that kids have that transition and that they are coming to their school.
Can I just ask
Just
a
a minute,
follow-up?
just a minute. She had her hand up. Director Guzman Ortiz.
My question is actually a little different, so if we want to
Yeah.
just stay on this one so we don't get confused, I would be fine to wait.
Thank you. Director Sunday Gary.
I appreciate that. Thank you for explaining that. So here is the real challenge, because there are two pieces to it. So some may not meet the income limit to get qualified for this. Yet they can benefit if we have a thing. So can there be a place where families could pay like a fee for service kind of thing, and not at very high rate, but some kind of way, like a sliding scale, and match, so that we don't miss any children. Number two is that way they're ready for the kindergarten. Then the second thing is, as a coordinated care organization, the healthcare CCO, they're also looking at the early, part of the childhood as one of the metrics there. So they're also interested in the same thing we are looking. But the question is there a way we can partner with them so that all these children are identified and made sure there is a proper referral? Because my goal is, in the end of the day, our taxpayer-funded public schools, the only purpose is to have good citizens, responsible citizens. That's the reason we have this whole public taxpayers funded. And the sooner we start the education intervention, that becomes a good foundation for eventually having good citizens coming up. It's simple as that, literate citizens, school-ready citizens. So I think if there is a way we can, because the parents, some perhaps can afford a sliding scale or with the full fee, but they don't know about it. The second thing is there are certain cultural nuances, so they probably hold on to it. Or they don't see the value of early intervention that could. So we don't want to deprive anybody. And that could also be a way to supplement some of our revenue to, they can pay for it rather than simply having somebody to just be like a daycare. Or so this will be a much more evidence-based intervention for these children. So I'm just thinking aloud, is that a possibility to open more? We have so much of real estate. Is there a possibility to open a little bit more than saying that we are full now? What about those who can afford it? Why do you want to deprive them of the opportunity?
If I may, Chair, I think one of the things we're doing right now is proving how valuable this data set is, because, this is a presentation about our enrollment trajectory as a district. It's not as if these numbers are set in absolute stone. There are actions we can take that could have an effect on them. And so, Dr. Chandra Gary, the questions you're asking are almost exactly the same ones we've been asking ourselves internally since we first were able to dig into this data. And I think we just don't yet have answers. The questions that you're asking are actually quite complex in their relationship to systems, the relationship to finance, and for sure, I think what we can say is true across our staff and probably across this board is we believe that the more children who have access to high quality pre-K, the better. Mm-hmm. Whether they join our enrollment or not, it is a common good. We also can say that when they experience our high-quality programs, they stay with us at a 95% rate, and that is a good for the family, and it is a good for the community, and it is a good for the school system. So the question we've been asking ourselves lately is there a way to bring those together? We don't have enough answers to respond to your questions yet, but please know that it is very much at the top of our minds too.
I just say, when we talked, I mentioned that we've looked at other school districts and where we're at in that range. And so we are asking that question about school districts who have a higher percentage of that birth to kindergarten ratio, and what are they doing differently? So we are doing research into that to see how we can increase our ratio.
Director Guzman Ortiz.
Thank you, and thanks, Superintendent, because I just echo, right? We want to get our little ones in the door, and we know that it's a funding piece, not just within the district, but there's just so many system pieces there. So I just want to appreciate that that's the ongoing conversation. And reflecting from our retreat, I can see Director Chandragiri going into problem-solving mode, so now I know.
No, I just wanted to make sure funding shouldn't be a barrier.
Yeah.
For
No, and I don't mean that in a negative way, just thinking about how we're talking about it. So just naming, what we learned in an asset base from each other. I did want to ask Paul, and I think because, we look at these numbers and birth rate is one component of it, but I think for us to understand and just name that there's, you said we're capturing 80%, and I have, maybe a list of questions, but one of them is, if you could elaborate a little bit more, or anyone on the team, on what have we seen, since 2020, 2021, in terms of where families might be going. And I understand that we don't have all of that data, right? Like, we don't know exactly where families are going, is my understanding, because we don't, private schools, for example, there's no data for us to access. But I think if you could share for us all a little bit more about what are some of the other options that families are encountering that are available to them, that we've seen an increase out in community since, maybe pandemic days.
Yeah. Thank you, Director Guzman Ortiz. I think it's, first off, part of this is we look at that birth rate. It's also affected by those that are moving in and out of the district. And so if we have families choosing to move out of Salem because of cost, that piece, that affects this number as well. We're not necessarily able to capture that reason in here in the data, but that is one piece, is those decisions families are making. And I don't have anything to say that we're seeing a mass exodus from Salem of families. But I think what we see with COVID, folks got more comfortable with online learning. We've seen the growth in charter schools. We see with the other options out there, the private schools and whatnot, that folks are looking at. And that pretty much is it's the other school options out there that I think the options have grown for our parents to look at, and so that's affecting our rates.
Thank you, because I think that's important for us to understand now too, right, is that there's online charter schools that folks from all across the state are being captured by, and so there's kind of this competitiveness, and they're charter, and they're still public in some ways, so it's just the array of choices that families do have, and then, of course, the declining birth rate. And I echo, how can we capture families early so that we can keep them? Because once they're here, they can, have that sense of community and of belonging and stay with us. So thank you for that.
Dr. Sandagiri.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate Karina for asking that question, because, after COVID, parents are really looking for choices, because before that, there was not much choices in our nation and in our state and everything. And there is going to be some level of market pressure, whether we like it or not. I mean, for little kids, perhaps homeschooling and other options may work, but when they get to high school and other thing, I think we have a very distinct advantage of offering some high quality education that we can focus on. So what I'm really trying to say is, we also may have to start thinking in terms of how do we make it a little bit more customer friendly. In this case, I'm putting it in simple language so that people feel attracted to Salem-Keizer as the first choice or first thing. So we really have to kind of probably maybe do a little bit of focus group with folks who choose to do homeschooling or choose some other option, saying what is it that we can do to make it appealing? Because this is the way market pressure work in our nation, right? So how do we make it appealing? What are the kind of courses we can offer that makes you want to choose Salem-Keizer? Like C-Tech is a big plus point for us. I mean, not many small schools can compete with us and creating or recreating such a model, right? So I think we need to start perhaps reaching out to them. And several of the homeschooling parents have told me that, shared with me, that they are willing to sit down and talk to us. Because whether we like it or not, they are still paying tax towards the public education. It's like close to 30,000 plus per child. So it's an extra financial burden for a lot of these families to also send children to other schools. So I think probably having that kind of open dialogue, asking what can we do to think of our program which we can offer that will make it appealing would be one way to plan. But I want to change the question to a different part of the question. If some of the schools have enrollment with less than 60%, we still have to have a minimum crew of staff to keep the building open. At some stage, we may be facing a question of saying, is it cost effective to keep a building open if the enrollment keeps dropping in that zip code? Or do we need to have some kind of policy change which allows within district open enrollment, like Tulsa or San Antonio, Texas, or other kind of thing? Or our C-Tech program in Portland Road is a good example, which has very good outcome when you open it up to everybody. So I think we have some homework to do if this kind of trajectory continues, because we cannot continue to have business as usual and expect people will come. That's my thought. I'm just thinking aloud. Maybe it makes sense or not.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, in my 28 years of being in Salem, I've noticed some cultural traits. Certain families believe in keeping their kids at home until a certain age with grandmother. So that those are people that we need to try to reach out to as well.
Sorry. Do you have-
Yes.
Okay.
Director
Thank you so
Hudson.
much. Thank you. I do have many questions. Rather than lay out all of these questions, I hope that you'll jump in, maybe Olga or whomever, if I'm incorrect, so you can correct me on something. So some of the questions we get are, so the 4 out of 5 students not being able to do math, achieve math at grade level, and then the 3 out of 4 reading. So I understand that we had mentioned we have a new 5-year trajectory on the reading, restarting after a couple of years ago, because we had a decline, and we're starting now with the STAR system moving back up. But with that in mind, being careful, it's interesting because that's where my mind was going. If this was a business, what would we be looking at? We'd be smart to go ahead, and we talked about community outreach, having a discussion, seeking outreach with homeschool, private, and teacher input. Our teachers, so valuable, that have been here and with the district, what they see. So I haven't heard of a real solid, and maybe we have it, and I haven't learned that we have it yet, a system that we have in our district where teachers are able to give their input and feedback of things that they think would help. So like we did the community outreach where we met, previously at the different schools to gain input. The same with the teachers, so that we can kind of data collect and see if we see waves and majorities in certain areas, because otherwise we are projecting the future, the next few years, and we see the 80%. Again, so if we thought that were true, we'd be wise to be considering what have we not tried, and how can we, again, capture that 20%. So I'll pause right there, and I don't know if you have feedback. If you don't, I can continue.
I as I can see Olga's wheels turning, and as she works through her response, I want to combine these two comments. I think it is immensely valuable to learn from people who have made decisions to opt out of Salem-Keizer, whether it's homeschool, virtual, private school. You do learn a lot from sitting with a focus group. I also just want to share that as we think about the bands of families that are making choices other than a traditional district, homeschool numbers have stabilized. So while we still want to know what is underlying the homeschool rate, that is not a growing force. It's plateaued.
But we don't know what the new births, where they'll be. That's what I was thinking, but go ahead.
Well, the phenomenon, the trend, as much as we can see it, is that homeschool has plateaued. What has not plateaued is virtual charter. And I think this is where Dr. Chandragiri's point about appetites changing after the pandemic is in place, because there is a phenomenon across the nation where families are more interested in keeping their kids at home for a virtual education. And I think that is also, it is a market force, but it also demands that we ask a question about what we are. Who are we as a district? What is our unique value? Because in private sector or in public sector, you cannot be everything to everyone. You should optimize what you believe you are best at. What we believe we are best at, the unique value proposition of a comprehensive school district, is in-person instruction. It is what we believe in. It's what we have seen works. It's what we know is best for most, not all, but almost all kids. And so this eventually raises the question for us, I think, as we do this research about whether or not we want to chase a model that is not the primary model that we believe in to pursue enrollment. And these are the kind of philosophical questions that this data helps us ask, and eventually the board is going to need to answer. And sometimes there is a segment that you let go because you know it is not your unique value proposition. It could be the case that virtual charters are that way for us. And what we do is we focus on being the very best in-person instructional opportunity in our catchment area. And then, Olga, I think you were going to jump into.
I think what I can add to that is exactly that last point, being we are working really hard in being the best opportunity for our students, the best experience for them, so that we can change those numbers that you referred to. Those math numbers and those literacy numbers are in our minds every day, and in our teachers' minds and our principals' minds every day. We share them with parents, and we are working on that trajectory to get better so that schools and students that can pick us and parents can choose us and then stay in our district.
Thank you, because I do understand in the polls that I've taken with those groups that those were the primary reasons why they removed their children and have no means and anyone in their family line to attend public school. But I was curious, I didn't hear the stat. Did you mention before, so right now it's 80%. What was it before we saw this rapid decline? So before COVID, for example.
We were at 90% before
Okay.
COVID, and then we dropped down into the 70s,
There we
and
go.
then it's come back up around 80.
Okay, so it seems like there's potential. So if it was at 90, it dropped to 70, it's come up 10%. If we look at this, and we should have an expectation to be able to climb another 10%. And I think that would be right. That's our goal. I mean, I don't know. I think that should be fairly easy. I know the mockery behind the word easy, but in a sense, because it took us just a couple of years to get back the 10%.
I think that we agree that climbing back up is an important part of our district's future story. I don't think we know enough right now to say whether it's easy or hard, because so much has changed in the way that people make decisions about their kids' lives in the period. The world of parenting has changed a lot and is continuing to change fast. So it's not that we disagree, it's that I think we would just say we don't know that kind of recovery is easy or hard. We just know that we want to start working on it.
Dr. Sandhgiri?
I'm just going back to the same question. You're right, Superintendent, that we have to at least say this is what we are good at. But in this day and age, I realized one thing, that people are wanting options, people are wanting different models. They may say, yeah, I like this Salem-Keizer's music program. Can I bring my child for the music? But the child is doing better in advancing in math at 8th grade, even though the child is in 5th grade when they're doing online. So they're really asking for more than one option rather than one or the other option. So I don't want our community, the taxpayers, to be left with forced choice, either this or that, rather than how can we make ourselves adaptable or flexible so that we offer choices. Some parents have told me, we teach our children civics from very young age. We don't have to, that way we can get them to do civics advance. Some have shared with me that, like what you mentioned, they're reading at a much higher rate. So some are afraid of the safety and the discipline questions. So there are different reasons people cite for having this, but at some stage they really are asking, we need some choices, like we like the music program, so we can, how do we kind of have that ability that we can say, we can unbundle our package and say, you're a taxpayer, you can use the music program, but we also offer a hybrid online and the thing so that you can take that course and proceed ahead if your child is superly sensitive to crowded classrooms or the high stimulation thing. These are the kind of questions that I get asked. And so I think moving forward with the numbers declining, because each child as of now is bringing close to $30,963 to our revenue. That's what I sat and divided the total budget with the number of kids. So I think when parents find that they are making choices, not completely satisfied with their choices, yet they are helpless. Again, there are some who don't have the financial means or ability to sit and teach their children, and they are now stuck with having made a choice. Now what do we do? Because your little kids, they can probably do the homeschooling or some other schooling, but eventually they find that it's reaching a ceiling, and then they're saying, what do we do? And so I think probably good start would be listening to them, a group, and then saying, are there possibility for us to say, there could be more than one option that we can. That doesn't have to be a primary line of business. It can be still in school classrooms and things like that. But we need to at least be able to offer some option for our families. That's what I was thinking. That will kind of match both.
Director Guzman-Ortiz.
Thank you. I just want to, I think we've touched on it a little bit, but there are several slides that you kind of ran us through, Paul, regarding school capacity and what that looks like down the line. And I don't believe we have answers right now, but I do think it's important to name that this is in front of us, right? That there's going to be, the enrollment change is going to impact how full or the vacancy in our schools and our space. And so I know that we are also having a conversation. We have this ongoing conversation around facilities. So if you could help us connect the dots, I think, as a board here, but also for like the public around where these data points, where are all the different places where we're looking at this data and trying to make some future-oriented decisions.
Yeah, thank you. Great question, Director Guzman-Ortiz. So, part of showing this data is that we have this excess capacity of facilities that's coming or growing there. And so, when you look at the number of 1,000 kids, 1,000 students that we've dropped, if the math doesn't work out nice and even, but you think about that, that's what, 2 schools, 2 elementary schools, 3 elementary schools that we're seeing that almost every year drop in overall capacity. So, of course, we don't want to, the math doesn't work to just load them up on one schools, but I think it's one of those things as we look ahead, to our long-range facility plan. We're working on that now. Part of that enrollment is this data is part of that the task force and our team is considering in that data. And I think it's a dialogue that we'll need to have over the upcoming year about what we do with our infrastructure, whether it's discussions of boundary changes or closures and consolidations. That has to be on the table and part of our discussion going forward.
Thank you. And I know it's hard to hear, right? And we were also watching neighboring districts go through exactly some of those options that you just outlined. So I think it's important for us to be very blunt in essence of like what the list of possibilities might be, and not that we're making any decisions, but that it doesn't come as a surprise when some of whatever options ahead are on the table.
Yeah. And I'd say just beyond the, if I can just add, just beyond the financial, when we think about some of the opportunities we'll create for our children by being able to focus more into a school with more children and putting more resources into that than what we can provide if we're spread out in smaller pockets across the district too. So that's where I think we have to look at this is it good news or bad news? It's news. And we have to look for the opportunities and what we can create for our students.
Thank you very much for that report. We sincerely appreciate it. Oh, Jolie has a question.
It's kind of a question, kind of just like a wondering. I was just wondering, like, maybe potentially is like enrollment and attendance rates, could that also be stemming from people like having fear of like going to in-person school, especially with like bullying and all the like political things that are going on, and like school like shootings or things like that. Like I feel like maybe like parents might be more scared to send their kids to school, like especially that might be a thing that's shifting. And then also a thing I feel like as just a thing like to propose to like focus on addressing in the future is like students learning how to learn like at home, because I remember when I was in elementary school, like, and I'm learning stuff at school, I'd like go home and then I'd be like, I don't know how to do this. I would be like, why is this so hard for me? But like this week, while I was it's finals week this weekend, I was talking to a teacher and she was like telling me good strategies to study and things like that. But I feel like a lot of times we don't have enough of that in our schools, especially like the math rates. Like I think like 90% of my friends are like, oh, I hate math. It's my least favorite thing, because they're not like taught how to like struggle with something, but like still push through it and like learn how to do it on their own. Because I feel like a lot of students are like, oh, I'm not understanding this right away, and they're like, and that makes them feel like they're not smart, even though they're just struggling a bit. So like they just need to like, there needs to be like a better way to help students feel like they can be good learners. I feel like is just, I don't know.
It's a great point.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our final item on tonight's agenda is the results policy report on regular attendance for the school year 2025. I will hand it over to the team for information and discussion.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Richardson, Board Directors, Student Advisors, and Superintendent Castaneda. Tonight, we're going to review our progress in the area of attendance. Specifically, we're going to look at the goals that you set for the percentage of students who attend school regularly. When we say regularly, a regular attender is a student who attends more than 90% of the time. So for example, last year, the school year we'll be talking about had 169 school days. So a student enrolled all year would have to miss no more than 16 days to be considered a regular attender, which is fewer than 2 days per month. Throughout the year, all of last year, and continuing into this year, our school and district teams have been working hard to partner with families, reduce barriers to attendance, and celebrate improvements in our attendance rate. Next slide. So based on our official definition for attendance rates for regular attenders, here are our results from the 24-25 school year. We've increased our regular attenders rate nearly 1 percentage point to 56.9%, which is continuing to exceed our annual target from the board. We also want to make sure that we're talking about what's happening right now. So the data you see on the slide is from the 24-25 school year. But in this current school year, when we came back to school in January, we were currently at 60% of our students were regular attenders. So that means that we're already continuing that upward trajectory in this upcoming year. And as long as we continue that path, we'll come back next year continuing to say that we're exceeding that target. One other piece I want to note before we go to the next slide. As we look at this data, we're talking about, again, students who attend at least 90% of the time. But I do want to bring your attention to our just daily attendance rate. Our daily attendance rate talks about how many students are at school on any given day. And our current year, similar to 24-25, district-wide, our average attendance is about 86.7%. So as you're looking at some of the data here, I just want to remind you that most students are coming to school a lot. They're just coming short of that 90% threshold. And we want them to be here at least 90% of the time. But we're also celebrating our students who are increasing their attendance every 1 percentage point, because every day they're in school is critically important. Okay, next slide. So on these next 2 slides, we're going to look a little more deeply at the data to understand more about our students and their attendance. On this slide, you'll see any row with an arrow indicates a group that saw an increase in their regular attendance rate when comparing 2023-24 to the 24-25 school year. We see that for our ethnic groups, nearly every ethnic group showed improvement. We had 2 groups of students, our Asian and our white students, who were both above the district goal, but showed a decrease compared to the previous year. When we look at their progress this particular school year, right now, we're seeing that both of those student groups are at a higher attendance rate compared to last year. So again, if we stay on this trajectory, we expect to see their improvement next year. All of our other focal groups, both for gender and other groups of students, including our English learners, our migrant students, our recent arrivals, and our students with disabilities, showed improvement. So we're really excited to come this year and show you all of these upward arrows and continue that trajectory. All right, next slide. On this slide, we're looking at our attendance per grade. Last year, we actually talked a lot about kindergarten attendance because we know that getting a strong start at the beginning of school is really important. So it's exciting to see that kindergarten is up 2.4 percentage points. And also, we have increased our kindergarten attendance a total of 12.8 points since 22-23. So that work that's going into focusing in with families on the importance of attendance from the very beginning is paying off. We see here that students in kindergarten, grade 2, grade 3, and grade 4 increase their regular attendance rate in the 24-25 school year at our elementary schools. At our secondary schools, grades 6, 7, and 9 showed improvement. One last thing I wanted to note, we've talked with you earlier this year about our work to increase sense of belonging. And one of the things that we had seen previously in some of our sense of belonging data was that transition years were some of our most challenging years. A lot of our schools and a lot of our staff and teams have put great effort into focus on those transition years. And all 3 of our school level transition years, kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th grade, are showing good improvement. So we're really excited to keep that trajectory going. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Cobb, who's going to tell you a little bit more about what's happening in our schools.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Richardson, board members, student advisors, and Superintendent Castañeda. In the next slide, we're going to see a summary of what Deputy Superintendent Neves shared with you. There's a lot to celebrate, and there's also a lot of work to continue doing. You'll see there in the slide that 53 out of our 65 schools exceeded our district goal. We have some schools to celebrate, like Keizer Elementary, that increased by 13.1 percentage points from 23 to 25. And we have another school like West Salem High School that increased by 3.8 points. 36 schools had higher percentage of regular attenders than the prior year. So again, those students that are here 90% of the time or more. And then 5 schools improved by 5 percentage points of more, like Keizer, for example, that I just shared. So there is a lot of work, and it starts with relationships, and it starts with communication, and it also, to Director Hudson's point, is also about academics and how kids feel when they are engaged, when they're challenged, and when they are learning. Just today, we were in a school visit, and the principal was sharing how kids feeling successful makes them want to do more, be challenged in a different way, and then be in school more time. So we know that those are the strategies we need to focus on. So we just showed you all of the numbers from one year to the next, but those are summative numbers that tell us the journey we were in, and now we want to start sharing a little bit about the journey we're in right now, and that we are using to predict how we're going to end next year in these reports. So let's go to the next slide, please. These pictures are examples of the strategies that all of our schools are using to increase engagement, attendance, and participation of our students in our schools. To the left there, you see Salem Heights Elementary, and these are simple strategies that, again, are all based on relationships and sense of belonging. Salem Heights does a special fancy dinner for students that meet their attendance goals, and they get to have lunch with friends and just be celebrated in the school by sitting at a table that is specially made and having a special meal for their celebration. To the left, you'll see there an example from Auburn Astros. Astros is the mascot at Auburn Elementary, and they have 9 collectible pins, and students get a pin when they meet 100% attendance. And so you'll think that it's really hard to get to 100% attendance in a month. Well, there have been 644 pins given to students this year. So kids want to be celebrated. They want to have the pin. They do special assemblies, and kids get to come in their pajamas, or parents get to join them with crazy hair. Just you name it. Schools are trying it all to have kids feel like their best place to be during the week is in school. But these are examples of elementary. We want to tell you about what's happening in middle school and high school. At Whitaker Elementary, for example, attendance has been a focus, and they connect their growth also to their data that came in the Panorama survey around sense of belonging. Students feel successful. They feel like they have a person that they can connect to. They have strategies to get to the barriers that are getting in the way for students to come to school and be engaged. And they also see that the more they celebrate academics, the more they celebrate honor roll students, the more they celebrate students of the month, the more kids feel comfortable and successful academically, the more they want to be in school around other peers and their teachers. We also have a lot of connections with our extracurricular and enriching activities. We know that if students are connected to a music program, to sports, to an arts program, they also feel connected differently to their peers, to the community, to the school, and they want to participate in performances and then be in school every day. Another example, at Leslie Middle School, they have a team approach that it's not only done in the classroom, but also done by their CSOC, their community outreach coordinator, their office manager, the principal, the people that are in the support roles, the counselor, behavior specialist, where they are checking in with students individually. They are developing contracts for attendance, and then again, having conversations about what are those barriers that get in the way. They have a program called the Awesome Attendance Program, and they celebrate students that are at 98% or higher attendance during that month. And they have prizes, incentives, and they make sure that the prizes are the prizes that 12 to 15-year-old want to get, and sometimes those are very special and very specific. But what we love also about what Leslie's doing is that every month they start over. So even if you didn't make it the month before, you have every opportunity to make it the following month and be participant of the celebrations. We take informal data, just like we do with reading and math. We're always checking in to see what data is telling us every month and how can we predict what things we need to do differently to get to our goal. And at the elementary level, with some of these examples, we see some schools that in January were already at above 800 percentage points from where they ended the year last year. So we can easily predict that those schools will have growth by the end of the year. And using the same checkpoint for Leslie Middle School, it's at 2.2 in January. They had grown from their target that they met in June of 24 to now they have grown 2.2 points. Something really important too that is happening is that it's not only the effort of the school, but also the effort of the equity team, the community resource specialists. There's the special education department, the behavioral health team, social workers, school psychologists. There's a whole team that looks at the whole child. And as we identify the barriers, then we bring in other resources and other supports to help the student or help the family. Sometimes it's not just on the student, but on the family. A couple other examples. At Sprague High School and McKay High School, they are seeing success at implementing student contracts. And this is just sitting down with the student and looking at what are the barriers, what are the things that getting in the way, and then also comparing that to their graduation goals, what credits they have, how are they feeling in classes, and then problem solving around that with graduation coaches, CSOCs, community resource specialists, counselors, behavior specialists, the whole support team. We feel really proud of the work we see happening right now. We know there was a 1 percentage point growth from last year, but with all of these efforts, we expect that we can come back here next year and report to you that we're climbing up, careful but sure, but in a very secure way, and also hopefully more than that 1 percentage point that you saw this year. Next slide, please. So we want to share with you exactly what we're doing from the district side of things to support. And on the right, you'll see our current progress, and we have listed number 1. This is, as you know, one of our important goals in our Climbing Together plan. And for these, we have an Attendance Matter campaign. And part of that campaign is that schools have a toolkit, and the toolkit includes everything from scripts on how to make phone calls to families, scripts for letters that we send home, strategies for interventions, strategies for celebrations, and just it's always fed with ideas and updated and sent out to school. And this also comes in with a little bit of support from funding so they can pay for some of these activities. Then we also developed an attendance strategy playbook, and these allow schools to follow the same framework and follow the same strategies, and then also look at a set of data that is provided by us so they can understand the patterns that are happening in their schools and then respond appropriately with strategies. For next steps, we implemented nudge letters, and these are letters that are written not as a punishment, but in very positive tone, saying, we need you, here's why, these are the incredible assets you bring to our school, please come back. And so we're sending those centrally, they're not sent by the school. Schools, like I said before, they develop their own contracts for attendance, but the district is sending centrally those letters to families or to students to encourage them to come back. Then we have a survey that we have sent out, and we have right now about 200 responses from families and 500 responses from secondary students. So we spend time analyzing what families are telling us they need, or the barriers that are created, or students tell us in secondary, one of the things that they've said is, when I feel engaged, when I feel like I'm learning, when I feel successful, when I feel like I'm connected to other kids, when I feel like there's a lot of purpose in the work and the participation I have in school, I want to be part of that experience, and so I want to come to school. And then finally, we always are in the look for grant funds to be able to invest in all of these strategies and have schools, do the celebrations that we need. I have to mention, there are incredible partners in our PTCs, our parent-teacher clubs in schools, that really help with these efforts. They buy pizza parties, they buy an OMSI experience in the school at the elementary level for goals around attendance. And to close, I would say, again, it's all about relationships and us getting to know our kids, not only as groups, but really important to know the student as an individual and understanding what are the conditions that are keeping them from coming to school. If there's fear around what's happening, in our community, then we try to support that so that we understand where they're coming from and where's that fear coming from, and see if we can remove that barrier so they can come back and stay engaged with us. And right now, we will take any questions you have.
I want to know, do schools still have the ice cream parties? For perfect attendance.
We have ice cream parties, pizza parties, Takis parties are very popular. We don't like those very much because they are not as healthy, but we say Takis parties, and kids work really hard for that.
They do.
And then for secondary, Danielle will tell you too, technology. Anything technology for kids are something that they want to work for, or just experiences are important for our teenagers.
Bingo party.
Yes, Director Ornish?
I have a question. If there is a student with some extenuating circumstances, illness that keeps them away, or other situations where they can't attend physically, are there ways that they're still connected with the school and so they can keep up? That's one question. And then two is, how does that factor into attendance?
To the first part, yes, we have, this year I know of a couple of cases of students. One, for example, had a long stay at Dornbecker, and the teacher and the parent created a schedule where the student could connect to the class to listen in, and then they were sending them material. So we always, if there's something like that in families, let us know, or we find out through all of the interviews we do with families or the contracts. We always want to be flexible with that. I don't know about the impact to attendance. I think it still impacts it, but I can follow up on that question because I don't know that I have that answer with me.
Jackson?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. First, I just want to point out how incredible it is that we're The really low numbers in the demographic breakdowns, like Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islander, non-binary, homeless, like, are all like increasing by not small amounts. I think that's incredible. I just wanted to point that out. They're the people we need to focus on the most. Keep up that standard of equity. But one thing I was just gonna suggest is like all of the high school grades seem to be much lower than the rest of the grades, and I think that can probably be at least addressed in maybe the superintendent's cabinet, one of those meetings. I don't know. But yeah.
Thank you. Director Parker?
I kind of just have a question following back on what Jackson just said. I was curious, what are we doing for the Asian and white students? Or have we spent the last time focusing on more of the other ethnic groups? And do we have any strategies to help improve the Asian and white students? Do we have any idea why they're not coming to school as much as the other groups?
So I would note that, one, those students actually are coming to school more regularly than our other focal groups. We just saw some decreases from their previous year data. And so one of the things that we looked at is actually how are those students doing this year? And they're actually on track to be improving. Their attendance right now is actually higher, both in terms of attendance and regular attendance rate, than it was at this point last year. And so we are continuing to look at, as Deputy Superintendent Cobb talked about, we're looking at individual students and saying, that schools, for example, McKay has a way that they're looking at students, and every 2 weeks checking in with students and saying, are you getting to school every day? What is this looking like? And that focus on individual students is what we're seeing playing out in our data this year, where our students are doing even better. And so both of those focal groups, we'll continue to dig in to understand which individual students may have had changes in attendance, but overall, we're seeing that is sort of bouncing back, and it may just be a fluctuation, which can happen year to year.
Okay, that's good news. And then I had another question too about going back to the students with the attendance with the little kids with the pens and stuff. Is that across the board for Salem-Keizer? So like if a student moved from one school to another, would they have some kind of incentive program in almost every single one of the schools so they can still have that fun and excitement, just not for like a few certain schools? Is it across the board?
Yes, we have attendance matters campaign in every school. And not only those celebrations, but also academic celebrations, assemblies. There's all of that happens very regularly in all elementary schools. And I would say in all of our schools.
But they just do different things.
Just different things, exactly. Not the pins in every school, but maybe 10 schools have the special lunches, they do the parties, they do the pizza parties. It's just a little different for the identity of the school. And usually these celebrations are made and they are created based on the feedback that the kids provide. The teachers or the principal ask, what do you want to do? And then kids propose things, and that's how these events happen. There's sometimes kids that say, we want a dance party every Friday. And so they work through doing that because that's what the kids are interested in.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
If I can also just add one thing to that. Yeah, if you were to walk into our elementary schools especially, you would definitely see this. You'd see all of the different incentive campaigns and student excitement. Part of the reason we're seeing more of that is that attendance matters as a playbook is something that our communications team has worked really hard over the last few years to develop, and every year they refine it. And Dr. Chandragiri, you had earlier today sent through a message about Attendance Works, which is a national research group that's studying this. The communications team has used a lot of the Attendance Works research to develop our playbooks, and then our school leaders and teachers just find ways to make it come to life.
Dr. Chandragiri?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm so glad that you all are using some kind of, because in preparation for this, I was kind of thinking what other states are doing, because, state of Wisconsin, it's probably, they are having like 20% before pandemic and of students who are not showing up. So for Oregon, I was taking 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25. Yeah, there has been slight increase, but compared to Wisconsin, we are still way low. So I was just trying to understand why some states are doing better than us. That's how I started, and I kind of stumbled upon that thing. And then second thing, how did we spend our ESSER dollar, and where did we put our money? Was it tied to an evidence-based with strong evidence, or do we have to rethink what we are doing? So I just started looking at, we are having this race and ethnicity as a category, but we start assuming that that's one big category with, there's no diversity within that category. But then I started wondering, there are some children who have anxiety or depression, or they may have serious school avoidance or school phobia. That is one group. It can cut across any racial group. Or some may not even understand the importance of things. Sometimes when I was having little children, they used to send a message saying your child didn't show up, but they didn't say they didn't show up. This is like the 5 days out of last 2 weeks or whatever it is, you're coming close to the 90% mark. So it was just like a one point in time message, rather than saying this makes it like the third time they are not showing up in this calendar year or something like that. So there's no way for parents to keep track of things. So there is an example of what I was trying to say. Or some may have serious problem in accessing all kinds of facilities. So they don't have this community school concept, one of the draft which I dropped to our chair some time ago. Hope our board can discuss that, because they do have strong evidence to show that it can boost the attendance, especially when our children have so many multiple it's very intersection of so many challenges. They may be homeless, they may be from one ethnic group, they may be English language learners, parents don't have a car if they miss this yellow bus. So there are a lot of things can come together. So the reason I was looking at the data, for some reason from elementary we are doing a good job. There is probably one teacher. Then they go to the middle school, it starts dropping. Then they go to the high school, it further drops from 60% to almost like 45% or so. But there is also another problem with attendance, because attendance also directly ties in with our revenue. Average daily weighted attendance really translates into our revenue thing. So it really has a spiral effect. So for me, this is important. So when we look at the data, do we separate? Is this because of school avoidance or school aversion, or is it the parents' misconception that's making them say it's okay to sleep in today? Or is there another barrier? And is our intervention based on the underlying root causes, or is it still based on different ethnic group? Because that may not capture in my mind, because if it had captured, it would have solved the problem. In all these years, we have been doing the same way of categorizing all our children, rather than trying to say these kids have mental health problem. So that is a different subgroup, and here is how we are intervening, versus somebody's parents may not understand the importance of school attendance. So here is how we are attending. And how much more should we scale up this home visits that we mentioned somewhere in your intervention? Because some of them will probably need that kind of outreach. So when we are getting ready for our budget, how much more should we invest in a very intentional way, rather than shotgun kind of putting a yard sign everywhere and hoping that that alone will change the behavior? I hope it had. And are there some programs, are we willing to let go, saying it didn't yield the result that we are looking for? We need to think in terms of more targeted, appointed, based on the root cause. I don't know if I'm making sense, because...
Yes, I just want to add one note. I think that a lot of the ways that we're thinking about individual students, Olga shared about how that's actually, when we asked the schools who had great improvements, what are you doing? What are you trying? And when we asked the schools, for example, in the high schools where 10th, 11th, and 12th grade didn't show an increase, well, what are we doing now? Because we know that. The first thing all of the schools say is we're sitting down with individual students and we're sitting down with individual families and we're trying to understand what the barriers are. And our schools are doing that one student at a time, right? And whether it's an attendance contract, whether it's behavioral supports so that they're not missing being out of class or out of school for behavior, whether it's about resources that the family or the student need to be able to get to school, connecting them with resources, if it's about something like transportation, right? That the school teams are working doing that one student at a time. At the same time, they're lifting the celebrations and the recognition for the students who are meeting and exceeding our goals, because we want to make sure that both of those things are happening concurrently. And while our report is saying, when we look at our different demographic groups, here are the trends we're seeing, our strategies are really about individual students. And then our nudge letters, I don't think we expounded on this, but in those nudge letters, and I know there's a couple parents in the room, right? I get a regular letter as a parent that says, in the last 30 days, your student has missed this many days of school, their current attendance is, and they are on track or off track for our 90% goal. And we've heard from parents that that's been really helpful, right? If they look at it and they're like, wait, my student has missed how many days? They're reaching out to the school and it's coming to them, right through the app where they're checking grades and everything else. So we're gonna see these different strategies for addressing student attendance begin to compound. But I think the other piece there is that we really need the support of our families and community, right? We really need families to understand how important it is the students are there at least 90% of the time so that we can get them all of the instruction to help them move to mastery. And then also we need families to let us know when there are barriers so that we can partner with them to get them the resources they need to get their students to school every day.
So as a follow-up, are there our parents can volunteer and help? If there is a South Asian family, if they are volunteering and they understand the concept of 90% attendance, they're more likely to convince another South Asian family who probably came in the last 6 months because they know the language, they're culturally, they're understanding each other. Mm-hmm. I'm just using that as an example. So are there ways in which parents can start volunteering and where there is a very intentional way of deploying them for reaching their own communities or friends to make sure there is some kind of peer pressure among these collective communities to make sure their kids are also attending and see the value of school attendance. See, that's one reason I think, because in the intervention, it mentions parents receive a nudge letter. That's like one of many mails they will receive. But if there is a way we can invite them or reach out to certain communities, and that is another thought I had, is what role can parents play, because attendance is very, very, very important. And what are some of the ways in which we can be involved as parents from different communities where they may have different understanding of what is the value of this attendance. And sometimes if you miss a few classes, it becomes a lot harder to keep up the classes at higher levels that they go. And nor parents can sit and teach them because for a variety of reasons. Any thoughts on how we can intentionally start including parents for the sake of attendance?
I think this is where our team of support staff, like in the equity team, they help us connect families to other families so that can happen. For supports on transportation, for supports on just connections in the community if they are newly arriving to this country. There are many strategies that we utilize to support families, or the social worker connects a group of families together that are dealing with a specific issue so that they can connect, to the resources and the schools. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we use some of the grants that we are securing for these to expand in our home visit efforts. Because like you mentioned, some students just don't want to come to school because there's other issues happening. There's mental health barriers maybe. And so we go to the home. And it depends on if the school has the capacity to, and then we're building up to that. But we are trying different ways to have these conversations in spaces where families feel most comfortable, and then invite kids in and try to problem solve on the barriers in an individual basis, like Danielle said.
So if there is a way for identifying how much more should we invest in the next budget round for that parent home visits kind of program, because that is known to have good yield. So is there a way, some kind of dollar amount that it doesn't have to be today, but somewhere we can start thinking in terms of our discussion when the budget starts meeting?
I don't know that we have that.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that information. Yeah.
I also add that there is a lot of evidence nationally that the stronger the connection is, including home visits from trusted, known members of the school community, the better attendance is. This is also part of the reason that we believe it's so important to maintain a really strong culturally and racially diverse group of school-based staff, because the people that families welcome into their home are often the trusted members of the school community who are from their community too. And so there is a virtuous cycle that we need to find and maintain that includes thoughtful use of home visits.
I just want to share that I know there are some great strategies being used in our schools. I know that when students are having problems attending, that the school knows that, and they have kids to check in. And if they don't check in, then they call to see why they're not there, and maybe even go to make a home visit to see why they're not there if they're not answering the telephone. The other thing I want to reiterate is that I strongly, strongly believe that it is everybody's responsibility to make sure the kids are attending school. Now that I'm out more in the public during the day, if I see students out, I go over and introduce myself to them and say, now where do you go to school? And why aren't you in school today? and it's very important to be in school. And all of our community needs to feel that responsibility. It's all of our responsibility to make sure kids are in school. And some of our parents that are working, they leave home before the kids leave school. So yes, we need strategies to make sure that we get those kids up and get them to school as well. There are a lot of great things happening in Salem-Keizer as far as attendance is concerned. Director Ortiz.
Thank you. My son gets upset when the only doctor's appointment is, early in the morning, and he's gonna be late because, Mom, you are compromising my perfect attendance, he tells me. So I am well aware of the effectiveness of some of these strategies, and kids do get excited. So I totally see that and experience that with my 5th grader. I know you've mentioned a little bit, and I do want to have a question at the end of this, but I am in this moment concerned about the impact that immigration enforcement is having on our attendance, right? Their practices, the racial profiling component of it all. And so families and individuals are afraid of stepping onto the street, of going grocery shopping, of sending their kids to school. And I hear that we're taking, one-on-one basis to the extent possible to respond to that. And I just, I think at the end of the year, we'll see what does it look like, and we can put all this time and energy. And there's some things that, like many things that are outside of our control, that we are just fighting against. And it's still very important that we make those calls, that we show up, and continue emphasizing. And I know, and I appreciate the district emphasizing the message of you belong and we want you here, and our schools are safe for you. I think that has helped to the extent, that as much as we can support in that end. To understand the data piece, I know we talked about data and we see these numbers, and I'm often curious, like, what does it look like on the back end? So I'm curious, do we have data district-wide, access to district-wide data
for those high, I mean, for all, but say specifically for those higher tier attendance concerns? And can we see those numbers live, like district-wide, or do those numbers only live at the school level? To understand a little bit more of what is the response to some of the interventions or the varying interventions. I'm curious to understand a little bit more, like what does data look like on the back end? Jonathan, looks like that might be for you.
Yep, I think, good evening. I think that was a me question. So the great news is one of the things that every single teacher collects every single day is every single student's attendance. So there's tons of opportunity for both site-based staff and leaders across the system to see and monitor that in real time and look at trends. Within our student information system synergy, an individual teacher, behavior coach, et cetera, counselor can look at individual students' attendance data by period, if you're in secondary, or daily across an entire year. At the district level, we also have a brand new tool that lets us track and monitor that data also in real time, looking at regular attender rates by different student focal groups, by grade, by school, over this year and compared to last year. And then coming up soon, we have a brand new tool that we're going to be rolling out as part of our strategic plan to help individual schools see real-time attendance data next to interventions and all of the other data, for example, their sense of belonging data, their grade data, and their test scores, to get a more holistic picture.
Thank you. I did not know any of that, so that's actually really helpful. And maybe kind of alluding a little bit to the investments that we've talked about of what we were doing, and some of it takes time.
Yes, and we'd be happy to do a little bit of the demo of what that looks like as well.
That'd be great.
Do we still have telephone calls that go out to parents?
Every day. Yep.
I get a text message for any tardies from a high schooler or any absences. It is finals week, and so the child said, I don't need to be there for this period. And I said, are you sure? And I did get did not attend.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Director Hudson.
So, thank you. I was thinking back earlier, as we continue to advocate the Salem-Keizer district with legislators and such, are we going to bring up the topic of truancy court, Oregon Compulsory Education Act? I know there was that for fines and penalties for families as well, for being more accountable for helping get their kids to school. Is there any discussion on that? What do you think?
That's certainly something that comes up in almost every system level conversation that I'm part of. But I think actually that's probably a question not for the staff, but for the board, because you as a body set the legislative agenda for the district. And so while the short session, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't have any legislation pertaining to attendance, it would probably be a good topic in anticipation of the long session.
Because we removed that, right, truancy court. So maybe you could bring it back up. And I know I can continue to advocate for that as well.
Just to clarify quickly, though, I don't believe we removed it. I believe there was statutory change at a state level, correct?
So I'm asking Karina and us and all of us that have an ability and voice while we're talking about the subject. I don't want to forget to thank you. And then I do have one more. So I was wondering, so about the, it sounds like we stopped doing the check-ins with the kiddos. Is that true? Because when I was in high school, the counselors did the check-ins then, and where are we and all the things, and tried to be on point for graduation. And is this really new, as I'm understanding in this conversation, or no? Okay.
No, our counselors have very big caseloads. And so there's an entire team, including graduation coaches, community outreach coordinators, behavior specialists, who work together in teams alongside teachers and other staff to identify students who need another level of support. And there are different ways that might happen. It might happen through the counselor's conversation with a student, but you might have a student who you're really focused in on their attendance in 2-week turnaround, and the counselor may not see that student again for another month. But there might be a different champion, a graduation coach, who's going and doing focused conversations with that student about their attendance. So it's a team effort. But I would say the check-ins are probably the greatest way that our staff is working on attendance at all grade levels. Basically, I mean, we shared the Leslie example, and it's the office manager who's part of the team who's reaching out to students and talking to students and parents about attendance as well.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So a couple things. Also, it sounds like along with that, the behavior specialist home visits as well, because I understood before COVID, they were specifically that title did do home visits. Do they no longer, or behavior specialists do currently? Okay.
Yeah. Behavior specialists, counselors, principals. Usually there's two staff members that go together. And depending on the case, and again, depending on who the family and the child trusts most, those are the people that are the right people to go in the home and do the home visit, or sometimes to just pick up the child. Some principals share that a parent calls and the child is just having a hard time getting out of the house. And so the principal just says, okay, I'm on my way. I'll be there in 10 minutes. And then the kid goes, oh, really? She's coming? Yep, she's coming. And you have to do that once or twice. And then after that, no more issues. So it just really depends in schools, again, case by case. We can't treat these as a group strategy. The celebrations are group strategies, but the interventions are very individualized.
I'm glad to hear that, because as we talk about the grants and securing funds for home visits and stuff, I just want to make sure that it is for each student, because we're looking at demographics and different things as one level for statistics. But if suddenly one kiddo just drops off because, you know, maybe they're not doing well in math or whichever, and their confidence is low and all the things, I just want to make sure that we are grasping their engagement as quickly as possible to turn around. Also, I know that prior, when we were and over the last few years, we talked about the inability to fund, say, the night classes. For example, North Salem High piloted a long time ago, along with that senior project, super fun. But what about contracts with there was a Northwest Youth Corps was a place that you used to be able to go, and in the summertime, the kids would get to gain 1.5 credits for building hiking trails and working on them throughout Oregon. And so can we look for more of those opportunities to try to engage these kids and to help them hit that graduation rate on their level? It's a request.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that particular organization, but we can definitely look into that next month. I will be back to talk to you about our efforts for 9th grade on track and graduation. And so we can definitely try to bring some information about the various ways that we're helping students both earn and then recover credits.
Dr. Sandegari?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Chair, for saying clearly that it's everybody's effort to make sure our children go to school on a regular basis. But I just want to kind of take a subgroup that also can probably play a role, because I believe that school aversion or school avoidance, like anxiety, depression, but a lot of our children also have like chronic asthma, for example, so they may be missing a lot of times for a variety of reasons, and it may cluster with high density of poverty and access challenge, etc. So are there some ways in which we can use our medical community, pediatrician's office, etc., to kind of reinforce this message about school attendance is a sign of health, and how to kind of try to discern if there is any underlying health barriers like anxiety, depression, asthma, etc. And what role can our nursing staff from our school play in such cases where there is an identifiable, challenge or aversion or health reason, which becomes perhaps an excused absence, but even at the end of the day, they are missing the classes, that's it. Any thoughts on that, and how we can work with the medical community and our nursing team in the schools can work with others to make sure that they have a way to manage the asthma or anxiety while they are still in the school without having to miss the class?
Yeah, our school nurses are part of our teams that are looking at those Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions for individual students. And they're very involved with students who have either acute medical needs or a new kind of medical need that comes up. And so I feel that we're pretty confident about that when the information that we know. I think where we continue to partner with our community agencies and to work with families is about when those challenges are not in front of us and we're not being notified about them, because that's when it's harder to bring the right strategy to the intervention because we may not know. And so I think the continued work that we all can do, as Chair Richardson said, right, all of us talking to our communities, to our neighbors about the importance of attendance and being in school, and having those conversations with medical professionals, with our churches, with all of the various places that our students are engaged with, that message then can be continuous. And we're always looking for ways for our community partners to let us know how they can help families who are having those varieties of barriers, especially if they are health or mental health related.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for all of that information that we received this evening. Did you have anything else?
I do ever so briefly. As people viewing may notice, we're all wearing these lovely t-shirts. I just want to share so much excitement and pride and gratitude. We have 2,700 elementary school staff going to 3 amazing days of professional development for the next 3 days, and that includes, I believe, 1,700 people working on science of reading. Do I have that right? That number right? So their brains are going to hurt, but their hearts are going to be full at the end of those 3 days. And we just really want to thank everyone who's participating, everyone who planned it, every parent who is working on childcare, because we know those days are hard. We are going to wring every last bit of value out of those precious days.
Thank you. Before we close, I want to take a moment to recognize a longtime Salem-Keizer employee. A memorial was held for him Sunday at First Baptist Church, Mark Gillum. He taught in the district over 20 years. He was a sports at North Salem. He was a sports announcer for many of our schools, and that church was packed with Salem-Keizer School District employees and students. His wife also worked for Salem-Keizer and is retired, and his daughters were our students as well. It was a beautiful celebration. All of his books were laying on tables for people to take. He had hats from all of the schools. They were on tables for people to take. It was just a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. So, Mark, we will miss you, and we just want to thank everybody for showing up and being there for the family. It is currently 7:43, and this meeting is adjourned.